Also, okay, yes. So this is our third session of the discussion of Bereshit. We got to chapter. We're still in the third chapter in the story of Etz Hadat. In 1 second, I'm going to pull this up because I didn't. The text of Bereshit. So last week we ended with the idea that there is a connection between the Garden of Eden, Gan Eden, and the Mishkan, right? Then the Etz Haim is actually the Torah, and the guardians are the Keruvim. And when God puts the Keruvim as guardians of Etz Haim and blocks the path towards Etz Haim, He actually wants mankind to keep searching for it, because this is the next forbidden fruit. There are two forbidden fruits. One is Etz Hadat, the tree of knowledge. There's the one that came first. Now I'm sharing chapter 3. And the second is Etz Haim, the tree of life.
Etz Hadat represents what?
So Etz Hadat represents free will. And this is the moment where we find out that we have free will and we can do whatever we want, which is empowering but also frightening, because who creates the boundaries? Where do we stop? And we also feel trapped, and this is part of the story. That's once we discover that we have free will and we go out to the world, we realize also the permanence of death. Death is looming, and it scares us. So, and we also then ask, what is the purpose of life? We're living in a circle. Live, be born, die again, and it's going in circles. So this, I think, is the theme of the klalot, the curses that Adam and the woman and the serpent they all go through are also not. It's not something that happened as a result of the sin, but something that is built into the world, and it's more descriptive than as a cause and effect. It's just a description of what God created. So God created the world containing death. That's an essential part of the world. But we keep asking why. Why do we need to die? I think that is also the midrash on the red heifer that says that the midrash says there's one question that no one has an answer for, and that is the red heifer. And so everybody understands that the question is, what is the logic of the ritual of the red heifer? But really, there is a logic that I discussed it somewhere else. But the question is about death itself. The original midrash was attached to the pasuk not about the red heifer, but what comes before. Adam ki yamut be'ohel. If someone dies, this is what you have to do. And the question that the rabbis raise, say, if you come and ask, why is this happening? God says, this is my decree, don't ask questions. The decree is death.
So the Midrash says that what we can't understand is death.
Is death.
Not
Yeah.
the red heifer.
Mm-hmm. We cannot understand death. So Sefer Bereshit comes to tell us, how do you deal with death? And not only with death, with other big problems that we have. I think we have several major problems. One is death. Second is pain in general, pain, disease, and hard work. All these things are things that people complain about all the time. We manage to control some of them somehow, right? We have prolonged life, we have better medicine, childbirth is easier, work is easier. I know of a couple, a frum couple. The woman is my wife's friend. She came to tell her that when they were talking about giving birth and all that, she told her, "Can you believe it? My husband told me that I should not take the epidural because the curse to the woman was, you will bear children with the pain, so I have to suffer pain." So she says, I told him, when you sweat to earn your bread, I'll suffer for it, right? Because you found ways around your curse. She also said that when you give birth, you decide whether to take it or not. But that's the those are I think the problems that the story tackles. So the free will is presented as eating from the fruit of the tree of knowledge, and now you're exposed to these problems. They were there all the time. Children don't think, most children, unless they're in encounter with it, they don't think about death or pain or disease or hard work. But with free will and understanding, slowly you get there and you start asking those questions. So this is described as a result of the actions, but it's really something that was built in. And what we find here is really a description of this vicious cycle. But before that, we'll go back to what happens right after they eat from the tree, which is chapter 3, verse 6. Verse 7. ותפקחנה עיני שניהם, וידעו כי ערומים הם, ויתפרו עלי תאנה, ויעשו להם חגורות. So their eyes were opened, and they knew that they were naked, and they sewed fig leaves together and made themselves girdles. So because of that verse, many Jewish commentators and definitely Christianity later on understood the sin of Itadat as something that has to do with sexuality. Because the first thing that they realized that they are naked and they cover themselves up. So hence the idea of the original sin, that in Judaism, when you say original sin, you think about the forbidden fruit. In Christianity, just about the sexual act itself is original sin. And this was supported also by a chapter in Tehillim. It's a 50 or 51, where David says, I was born through sin, I was conceived with transgression. So David, of course, is impeccable. So it means that every conception and every birth is sinful. But this is not the story, because David had his own can of worms. We'll get, hopefully at one time we'll get to Shmuel. But
now, Rabbi, question.
Yes.
Nakedness in English has many connotations,
right,
and one of them just means exposed.
Right. So I think that's exactly what it is. It means exposure, and not nakedness in the sexual context. And it's also a wordplay, because the snake is conniving, right? It's deceptive, and the word for it is arum. Arum. It's the same as naked, and so that is the character trait of the conniving person, who pretends to be totally honest and open with you, like I bear my soul, but really is lying. So this is the arum. So what happens between them? I think that because we're looking at the difference between the first chapter and the second chapter as a process where we get away from the equality in which God created us. So when you have free will, or when they have this understanding, the first thing they realize is that they're different. That's because of that nakedness, they're different. And they try to hide their differences because they feel embarrassed that one of them maybe feels superior to the other. It's not about sexual attraction. It's just about trying to hide those, to blend in, which people really do. And as a matter of fact, when you think about young kids, you would definitely see that kids, depending on society, up to a certain age, doesn't matter how people around them dress, they don't mind running around naked. But then with age, it's more of a question of awareness to their body and how they fit in. So this happens here, but more than that, in verse 8, they have to hide. Vayishmeru et kol Hashem Elokim, that they heard the voice of God walking in the garden toward the cool of the day. So they already perceive God as human. And it's beautiful, Rashi's commentary here, that this was God's way of engaging them in conversation. So he gives them a chance to come and say, we're sorry, we're wrong, but they are hiding. That's their first mistake. They're hiding instead of admitting what they did. But that act of hiding, they're hiding within or among the trees. That means that they understand that something has happened. They lost their trust with God. And that happens also to children when they do something that the parents told them is forbidden, they lost a certain level of trust. So, and they might be afraid, my parents are not going to love me in the same way they loved me before. So God now extends a hand and he says to Adam, Ayeka, in verse 9. And Ayeka, as I heard from my grandfather when I was a kid, Ayeka is the same letters as Eicha, which is the beginning of the book of Lamentations. So God here is in search of man. Says, what has happened to you? And here again is giving him a chance to confess, to say, I'm sorry. But instead, he passes it on. He puts the blame on the woman. But not only on the woman, on God himself. The woman whom you gave me, she gave me from the tree and I ate it. It's not my fault. It's your fault. I didn't ask for it. It's your fault. God,
back, were they told not to eat from the tree of knowledge or the tree?
The tree of knowledge. The tree of knowledge. Yes.
Of life, it was okay.
Yeah, life was not in the game because they don't need the tree of life unless they have the questions about life. If the tree of life is the answer to life, then you don't have the questions unless you have free will. So then God asks the woman, what have you done? And she says, the serpent deceived me or enticed me. And then God turns to the serpent and says, because you did that, you will be cursed more than all animals and all beasts of the field. You shall crawl on your belly and you'll eat dust your whole life, which sort of gives in, let us know that it lets us know that it's a myth and not reality, because the snake doesn't eat dust, even though it's that's what people think, what we see. So it speaks again, the vernacular speaks with Shon Bnei Adam. So it's mentioned again in Tanakh in other places. V'nahash afar lahmo. Yes.
So are you saying that the eating of the tree of knowledge didn't give Adam and Eve free will? It made them aware of their free will. They had free will before, otherwise.
But they never exercised it. Because
otherwise it wouldn't have been a sin to have eaten from something and then have free will.
That's like activating a credit card. It's there. I mean, the free will, the ability to disobey, that's free will. Right. The ability to disobey. But until they disobeyed for the first time, they never knew they're capable of doing it. So
they were unaware of their own free will.
No, they're unaware. The moment you ask, what have I done? Oh, I did that. I broke God's commandment. How can I do that? It means that I'm able to do whatever I want. Okay, so now we'll go back to the word Gahon later on. It reminds of the name of the river Gihon. So Gihon has to do with the way the river crawls, because Gahon is the belly of the snake, and a lot of rivers are serpentine, but it also has to do with birth. And there's an interesting connection between the serpent and birth, at least in ancient traditions. We'll get back to it. Now, in the next verse, 15, God says, I will put enmity between you and the woman, and between your descendants and her descendants. He will try to bruise or to smash your head, and you will smash his soul, his heel. And here the question is, why between you and the woman? It's between you and mankind. Why is that related to the woman and not to Adam? We'll go back to it also. The woman was told, I will greatly multiply your pain, and you will deliver children with pain. And your desire shall be towards your husband, and he shall rule over you, which is a statement that is being contested by many people. Not just by men who said that they don't rule, but rather by the first half, saying that the woman's desire is towards her husband. So when we speak about love, we could say there's love, there's connection, relationship. But when we think in general about desire in the context of men and women, it seems like we would associate it the other way around, that men have desire towards women and not as it is written here. I've heard that the Rav Soloveitchik was one asked that, and people said the reality doesn't go along with what the Torah says, and he said, you do not understand reality. But I think there's a better answer than that.
But in the translation here, it says, I will increase your suffering for your childbearing and pain shall be your children, yet your craving shall be for your husband.
Yet.
It seems like
even though
childbirth is going to be painful, and yet you're going to crave your husband, which is going to lead to childbirth. So you can't
Yeah.
get out of it.
Yes, but this is interpretation by our school. The yet,
Okay.
it's not written here.
So you should read it in
No, I don't think it.
conjunction.
It could be. It's a possibility. We have to have in mind that there is a difference between men and women in terms of the desire to have children. Women would like to have, in general, less children than men, because for them it is a task of the pregnancy, especially in the past, where it was very risky. The rate of women's mortality at birth, even in the beginning of the 20th century in America, was a very high rate, but in the past it was very common. So women didn't have as many children as people have, at least in the Orthodox communities, people have today. Even in the time of the Talmud, there's Rabbi Yehuda brags for having 5 children. You don't have anyone who has more than 4 or 5 children in the time of the Talmud. I know that those who do tziyum remember the children of Rav Papa that I mentioned at the end, like 12 of them, but it's already proven that it's not the same Rav Papa. That the children of 3 people by the same name that were pulled together, we don't know why. So, but men are willing to have as many children as they can because it doesn't cost them anything, right? That's why, I mean, don't think about monogamous marriage and American house that we have it today, but think also about the fact that a lot of powerful people have children outside of marriage, or the harems of the past, right? Remember the king and I, when the king of Siam asked the teacher, how many children do you have? And she says like 45, and he's embarrassed because he only has 30 or something. Doesn't understand that she speaks about her students. But that's a fact, that this is what men want. They want to have as many children as possible to pass their genes on as a means of control. That's what Genghis Khan did in Europe. But so the connection is less direct than what the R scroll suggests. And then Adam is being told, for listening to your wife, and you ate. Now here, you broke my order. You're the one who broke my order because I spoke to you directly. The land is cursed because of you. You will eat it with pain for the rest of your life. It will bring forth for you thorns and thistles, and you'll eat the herb of the field. You will eat bread with the sweat of your brow or your face until you return to the ground from the ground you were taken. For dust you are, and to dust you shall return. Is a famous statement, right? So the Adam merits a very long curse, but so there are a couple of themes here. One is the circularity, right? Where we're moving in circles, especially when we think about Adam. Adam is being told directly, Ad Shuvcha, you will return to the ground. You were taken from the ground to ground, you shall return. There's also the theme of food. They ate from the forbidden fruit. The serpent will eat dust. Men will eat food with hard work. But who's not addressed with food? The woman, right? Nothing is mentioned about food. So that is, here's the answer to the problem of desire. The word teshukatech is translated as desire, but there's another meaning, another significance for this word in Tanakh, which is sustenance. Like the word meshek. The title of Eliezer, who was the chief of staff, Metom, of Avraham, was Ben Meshek Biti. And there are a couple of pesukim, teshokekena, even the word shuk that we use today comes from that. It's a place where you have food. So velishech teshukatech, here's the idea of dependence, that you will depend on your husband, therefore he will control you. So it's a question of control, not because of desire, not because of childbearing, but because of sustenance. And this is something that is still true today, when we think of in most societies, even in the developed world, that men receive higher salary than women for the same type of work, and also it is more difficult for women to have tenure in certain positions because of childbearing and all that. That also works very well with the parallel of this pasuk in the story of Cain and Hevel, when Cain is being told the sin crouches at the door, and its desire it's towards you, and you will control it. It's a very, very difficult verse. A lot of commentaries were written on it. I mentioned in the class here that East of Eden, Steinbeck wrote it as the commentary, sort of commentary on Bereshit, and he deals with this verse, offers different commentaries throughout the book to what that means from a Christian point of view. But most people see it as something that goes on between sin and Cain. But there's another way to see it, and that is God is speaking about the relationship between Cain and Hevel. And he tells Cain, Hevel's sustenance depends on you, and therefore you'll control him. And he sort of soothes Cain. He says, don't worry. So what if I didn't accept your offering? You're still better than your brother, which didn't work because eventually Cain killed Hevel. But if we say that, first of all, it answers the question of desire. It's not about desire, it's about sustenance. But also, it completes the circle, because now we have a hierarchy. Everybody depends on sustenance, on each one with his food, like it's the food chain. So the serpent is at the bottom. The woman is on top of him, and her descendants smash his head. And I'll get back why the woman and the snake. Above the woman is the man who has to toil the land, but she eats from his hand. So everybody was punished in the context of eating. The serpent eats dust. The woman eats from the hand of the man. The man has to eat with the hard work. But the hierarchy is, what is the lowest of all? Dust. Then the serpent, then the woman, man, and that's it. Is there anything above man? Dust. Because men will return to dust. So it's a full circle. Now, that's where, I think we mentioned it last week, that's where man feels trapped. So what's the point? We're going in a circle. And the answer is Eitz Haim, the tree of life, the Torah, is how you break out of the cycle and you do something which is greater than this mundane life. There's the purpose in life that we all need. And God guides us there. So the Keruvim are there, but also the ever-turning sword, which is a problematic concept. So what is the ever-turning sword? I'll complete that and go back to the Klala. It's all intertwined. So it's a little, so in verse 24, you read the flaming sword, which turned every way. But there's another way to translate the word lahat. That's one I think of the key no secrets, but it's a key to interpreting the language of the Tanakh, is to take every word, especially if it's a problematic word, and look at all its appearances throughout Tanakh. Because sometimes we associate a certain meaning, but there's a secondary or even tertiary meaning in English, in Hebrew. And the word lahat in Hebrew can mean flare or flame, but could also mean magic, as with the wizards of Pharaoh, the Hartumim. It says, "Vayasu Hartumim belahatehem ken." It's what you call sleight of hand, or there are different terms, prestidigitation. It's an illusion, in other words. So La Tahara Mitapechet is an illusion. The Keruvim are there, and in front of the Torah, there's also the illusion of the ever-turning sword. So there are different ways to see it. I visualize it as a solid object that moves very fast in a circle, because we're talking about circles, right? And now it creates a sort of an impenetrable wall. But it's only an illusion, because if you could slow it down, you know that the object is only in one given at one spot at every given moment. So you can go through. So I think that's an allusion to the way people feels. A lot of people feel towards the Torah. It says it's insurmountable. It's very difficult. I can't do that. Really, what's difficult is not observing the mitzvot of going to shul. It's not even in Torah. Let's not talk about that. Tefillin or eating kosher Shabbat. It's about changing your attitude. It's about changing yourself. This is the true meaning of the Torah. I think it's a guide to shifting our center of gravity from being selfish to being altruistic, from being focused on the mundane to something which is greater. So this is not easy, but to think that it's impossible is an illusion. The Torah says, okay, now you have to come closer and try to get there. So now I'll go back to that question. I think that's the key of understanding the other theme of this chapter of why is it the descendants of the woman who are going to kill the serpent? And I think that is because both the woman and the serpent are symbols of life and death. I think each one of them is a symbol of both life and death, at least in antiquity. Now, the woman is a symbol of life and death is understandable, right? She gives life, and when she gives life, she also starts the clock of death. Because if you're not born, you're not going to die. So the woman is in charge of giving life and giving death, and that's why in the ancient myths, the myth of the Great Mother was prevalent. The goddesses were the ones who gave life, but they also were the destroyers in many different cultures. Eric Newman wrote about this. I think it was the first one who did the research on that concept of the Great Mother. And the serpent, on the other hand, is also a symbol of death, definitely swift, unexpected death. That's why the soul is, you're just walking barefoot in the desert and you don't expect that, but also of life. Why was it a symbol of life? And we still have it today in pharmacies. Do you have it in pharmacies here? The medical symbol, right? That's from Asclepius, the Greek god of medicine. Why did people think that the serpent is a source of life? Two reasons. One, because they would see the serpent shedding its skin, and they imagined that a new life emerges from a dead body. Also, they had this image of a serpent with its tail in its mouth. In some it's called the Ouroboros, the worm or the snake that encircles the world and eats itself. So it does happen. I did the research on it, and it happens in reality when serpents are confused with great heat, because snakes don't see, they sense temperature, so they mistake their tail for another animal, and they would
bite on it.
yeah. And I just saw a piece, I didn't look into it, about an anaconda that impregnated it herself this week. So there's another possibility of this like circle that is envisioned. So it's a real circle of life and death. People believed, for example, that eating from the placenta, or maybe it is true, could prolong people's life. They also believe that eating snakes can prolong your life. So the Torah takes all these, these myths are here, and so behind the scene, this is our obsession with the circle of life and death. You have two very powerful symbols of life and death, the woman and the serpent, who are vying for control. So the woman's seed will smash the head of the snake, and the snake will smash the soul or the heel of the woman's children, not men. It's the woman's children, because they are fighting over it. And maybe it's symbolic that it's head and soul, that the woman tries to protect the head, the brain. So the brain, the serpent brain is targeted, and the opposite with the snake. So this is one storyline here. It's answering our question about how the world is being run. Then one more.
Is it meant to be in perpetuity?
It is perpetuous, but you could break out of it. When so there are two ways to look at a circle. Either it's a circle that repeats itself, or it will go up in a spiral. And I think that's the way we look at Rosh Hashanah. It's every year we come back to the same point, but from a higher vantage point. So one last sort of like verbal clue that the Torah plants, which is beautiful, in verse 18, we talk about thorns and thistles. Those are round. The shape of most thorns and thistles are round. We think of the tumbleweed but in Hebrew, the word dardar is really a doubling of the root dalet resh, which means circle, and that's the word dor generation. Also comes from that because you complete a circle, and even the word kadur that we use in Hebrew, a ball, really means like. The kaf is like kmo du, like something round, which actually was like a thistle. So the Torah plants here a lot of very interesting hints to tell us what is happening with this story. And with that, I want to go back now and conclude the parallelism that I saw last week. We spoke about the Mishkan and the Gan Eden and the home, because here we look at the story of Gan Eden. So we started discussing last week. Gan Eden is like the home, everybody's home in childhood. We grew up in that home. We have boundaries. We have parents who are like God, tell us what to do, what not to do. We break their word at a certain point. We discover that we have free will, and then we're sort of being kicked out of that bliss of ignorance of that Gan Eden, and we constantly look for it. But it's good that it's planted in our memory because we have something to aspire for. Just we have to make sure that we're not getting lost in fantasy, and then we live in pastime. One of my favorite songs of Stevie Wonder is "Pastime Paradise." You know the song?
Yes.
And living most their life, living in a pastime paradise. It's a beautiful song because he starts with people spending most of their life living in a pastime paradise, and then he says, he concludes they're passing most of their time living in a future paradise. So God doesn't want you to get stuck there. Don't live in the past or the future, but learn from the past, transform your present to get to the future. So now the Torah creates this. It's very subtle. It's woven into the story of Bereshit, of the Mishkan, and Mishlei, Proverbs, which is a commentary part of it on Bereshit. So have in mind that we look at Gan Eden as the house, right? So actually we need a Tanakh here. When we we have to make sure we have JPS Tanakhim for everyone. But I'll pull up the okay. No, I have, but for you to. So I'm going to look first in the introduction of Maimonides of Ramban Nachmanides to Shemot. Very short introduction. Rabbi Moshe ben Nahman, Ramban wrote an introduction to each book of the Torah, and he calls Sefer Bereshit Sefer Yetzirah, the book of creation, or Sefer Yehidim, the book of individuals, and he calls the Sefer Shemot Sefer HaUmah, the book of the nation. And he says this: והנה הגלות איננו נשלם עד יום שובם אל מקומם ואל מעלת אבותם ישובו. Says the galut, the exile, is a circular movement. They moved away from their original home, and now they have to get back there. But even though they get out of Egypt, they're not yet at their original level. How will they get there? כשיצאו ממצרים, אף על פי שיצאו מבית עבדים, even though they left the house of bondage, they're still exiles, כי היו בארץ לא להם נבוכים במדבר, they were wandering in the desert. וכשבאו אל הר סיני, when they came to Mount Sinai, ועשו המשכן, and they built the tabernacle, ושב הקדוש ברוך הוא וישרה שכינתו ביניהם, and then God dwelled amongst them, אז שבו אל מעלות אבותם, שהיה סוד אלוה עלי אהליהם. Then they returned to the level of their forefathers who had God hovering over their tents, והם המרכבה, and they were the divine throne, ואז נחשבו גאולים. So of course Ramban goes a little bit with the Kabbalistic, in a Kabbalistic direction, but the idea is interesting. He says that the Mishkan, the real temple, is the house. What he says is that when the Israelites built the Mishkan, then they were at the level of their forefathers who lived in a tent with the divine providence hovering over it. And that's a very deep concept, because I think we mentioned that when we look at the Torah and the way it deals with the temple, the Mishkan, even though it's a central place in the desert, everybody's around it, but when you get to the land of Israel, it's a remote place. It's in Yerushalayim. Yerushalayim is also a city you have to ascend to get to. You get there 3 times a year. You don't have a mini temple in your backyard. Where do you live your life? Where do you sanctify your life? At home. And that is evident in the Mishkan. Because our Mishkan is very interesting. It's not a ritualistic Mishkan. If you think about other temples, I don't know, I haven't visited many temples, Temple of Doom or whatever, and Indiana Jones. But temples don't have furniture. But the Mishkan, the tabernacle, was built like a home. It has a table. It has an altar where you prepare the food. It has a candelabra and it has an aron where you put books. It's a nice living room. There's the inner sanctuary, like the room that nobody's allowed to go into, and then the Mishkan is built like a home. So here's an interesting connection that we find when we look at Mishlei. So I'm taking you to Mishlei for a second. The combination, there's a combination of 3 words, bechokma, bitvuna, ubeda'at, which later on was changed to chokma, bina, vada'at, which we say in tefillah, but also got into the systems of sefirot, of Kabbalah. Chokma, we understand, is wisdom. Bina is intelligence, is the ability to develop an idea, deduction, etc. And da'at is the power of discretion for making a decision. So you need all 3. You need to gather information, you need to analyze the information, you need to reach a decision in order to do anything. And that's the process of creation. So what was done, what was achieved with those 3 things? So in Mishlei 3:19, which we read last week, Adonai bechokma yasad eretz, konen shamayim bitvuna, beda'ato tehomot nivka'u. God created the earth with wisdom, established the sky with intelligence, and with discretion, he split the abyss. So Hashem is the creator of the world prior to Gan Eden with Chokhmat Vuna Vadat. And the verse just before that is Etz Haim Mahazikim Ba. It is a tree of life. So clear connection from Mishlei to the Garden of Eden. Here you have Chokhmat Vuna Dat, wisdom, intelligence, discretion, and the tree of life. Then if you look at Mishlei 24, Mishlei 24, verses 3 and 4, בחוכמה ייבנה בית, ובתבונה יתכונן, ובדעת חדרים ימלאו. So, a house shall be built with wisdom, it will be established with intelligence, and the rooms will be filled with discretion. So now we speak about the home. So we have the home, we have the creation of the world, and now, if we go to the Mishkan, what do you find about the Mishkan? God tells Moshe, I named the man who will build the Mishkan. His name is Betzalel, which is Betzel El, in the shadow of El, which is also like Betzelem, Elokim, same word. Tselem, Tzel. There are synonyms in Tehillim. And what did I do? Why did I choose Betzalel? This is 31:3 in Shemot. Va'amaleh oto ruach Elohim. I filled him with ruach Elohim. Where is the first time we find ruach Elohim? In Bereshit. Ruach Elohim merachefet al penei hamayim. It's the second verse. So God gives the builder of the Mishkan the same element that was there in the creation, bechokma uvidvuna uvedat, and I give him chokma, tvuna, and dat, all elements for the.
That's what it says about Betzalel.
Yeah, so
He uses those 3 words.
all 3 words consecutive.
3 times.
So you have the builder of the Mishkan is blessed with chokma, tvuna, vadat. A house is built with chokma, tvuna, vadat. The world is created with chokma, tvuna, vadat. So we have enough triple parallelism: the creation, which is Gan Eden, the home, and the Mishkan. Now let's look at the Mishkan and some other elements there that you can do, because you have the Chumash in front of you. So I want to look at Parashat Vayakhel. Yes. There. Okay. So, chapter 36. Chapter 36. Actually, this repeats also. Where is it? Yeah. The. Oh.
There's a chapter.
Yeah. So, chapter 36. Verse 24, there's a description of the system.
Page 523.
Yeah. ו40 אדני כסף, 11 מקרשים, 2 אדנים. So here we read the description of how, I mean, the whole chapter from verse 20 to 33 describes. I want to switch the screen to Hebrew and English for those who are online. So the system of the Mishkan is very interesting. You have to build like fences, right, walls around the Mishkan in the moving sands of the desert. How do you do that? So how do they really do that? They built the to imagine that, you have to think of upside down Lego bricks, have 2 holes in them, and then the krashim, each board, each plank had 2 2 plugs, and one plug would fit into one hole of one brick, and the other plug to another hole, another brick. So you have this system that maintains all these together connected, but they will still be wobbly, going back and forth to the sides. But at least at the bottom, they're connected. So the interesting thing is, the word for that socket is in Hebrew is Adan, Aleph Daled Nun, which sounds just like Adam. It's almost like saying that if you want to create, first of all, there are boundaries around the Mishkan, 4 walls, like the 4 rivers of Gan Eden, and they are supported by sort of something that symbolizes human beings. I mean that we have to be united. But okay, that you could say it's a little symbolical. But here's what I was really looking for when I did that. I was wondering, where is the serpent in the Mishkan? But at home there is a serpent. It's the idea of sin or problems or fights, just like in Gan Eden. The disease, the pain, the hard work, those are all the things that the serpent symbolizes. But the Mishkan is perfect. Where would you find in the Mishkan a serpent? It really, I've been doing it for years, and then all of a sudden it hit me that we do have it in the Mishkan. And that is if you look at verse 28, 26. It says this: you shall make bars of acacia wood. It's acacia, how do you pronounce it? 5 for the boards of the side of the tabernacle, and 5 bars. But the board bars is not correct. It's bolts. What is it? What is there?
26?
Yeah.
Sockets.
No.
There's 40 sockets. I think we have different.
26.
Are you at 36, 26?
No, chapter 26, verse 26.
Chapter 26.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so, wait, chapter 16?
No, we're in chapter 36.
אז נכון להיות. אז פרשת ויקהל.
לא, זה תרומה.
התרומה, אוקיי. So, 26, ועשית בריחים.
26.
Yeah,
page 457.
You make bars vacation room.
Bars, it's interesting. Why they call it bars?
To the planks in one
Because the barriah is a bolt. I mean, okay, you could call it the bar. So what they had, the planks were perforated. They had holes in them, and you would just you would put or maybe they didn't have rings. No, it was a hole, right, going through the bars. You can see the picture there, and the bar would go from one side of the wall to another. But then you have in verse 28, and the middle bar in the midst of the boards, which shall pass through from end to end. Meaning you have there are 4 walls, right? How can the bar go from one end to another? It had to be something which was flexible, maybe a spring.
Because this was one of the walls?
Yeah. So it goes from starting on, let's say, the east, going north, going to the north wall, then to the western wall of the Mishkan.
Went all around.
Right, all around. That's what it sounds like from the pasuk. So it has to be flexible, and it does remind a snake. So like I said, you look for the word bariah in Tanakh, and what do you find when you look for bariah? I have actually to pull it up.
Bariach is flexible. Is that
Bariah is actually a serpent. Bariah is actually a serpent. That's and I'll go to this pasuk 1 second. I'm going to share it on the screen here. And it's amazing. This is in Job. This is how all of the Tanakh is related. This is a commentary one on the other. In Job chapter 26, verse 13. Actually, I mean, it's all about creation. It speaks about tvuna, dat. It's all there. And then it says, "Beruho shamayim shifra," with his wind, with his spirit, Torah, the sky was perfected. Holela yado nahash bariah. His hand created the nahash bariah. So the serpent, the name of another word for the snake in Hebrew is nahash bariah. So now,
why do you need bariah? Nahash by itself is a snake. No?
Right. So the nahash bariah is a nahash that splits around, that twists around. There's nahash akalaton. Snakes in any language, I have a lot of names. I think because like in Spanish, you say víbora, culebra, serpiente. You have serpent, snake, viper. People use in general so people. We have this fear, I guess, of and we have all these names. So why really Nahash Bariah? The Torah gives us a hint. The Mishkan now is parallel to Gan Eden and to the house. The walls, the furniture, and the serpent are there. So even in the Mishkan,
it plays a very different role in the Mishkan.
Of course, it's a different role. It actually it's like a guardian. It's like a guardian, but it lurks. It's inside the walls. So it's the hand. But the point is not that it was really necessary there, but rather Torah plants as a hint to draw our attention to see how all these things are considered, are
so
related.
Say that the serpent, what the serpent represents, the sin and the challenge and the desire is necessary.
It is
for
life, right?
For good life, you don't have that. Doesn't hold together.
Right. This is how it is understood. It's that to expand on what you said. People, when we ask the question of like why do we suffer, right? Basically we're saying that if we would have been the creators, we would have done a better job because we have a better idea how to do that. Now, it doesn't mean that we can accept everything that happens. There are a lot of things that are really preposterous and should not happen. And we don't know what to do with them. But we don't know how we could have done it better. That's why I said this is the axiom. This is what we're given. We're given this world. We're given the manual. This is how you work it out. And if people follow the rules of the Torah, the world could be better. A lot of what happens in the world. This is something that has become sort of such a theology that's hard to argue with. That everything that happens in the world happens for a reason. God micromanages everything. It would have happened anyway. And it's fatalism, it's determinism. It doesn't leave much room for free will. So I argued once, and the rabbi who was representing another view, we were talking about Unetane Tokef. I said that most of the evil in the world is man-made. And before we turn to God and ask why are you doing this or why are we suffering, we have first to take care of what we created. Maybe then we could, right? So the other rabbi is like, what about the tsunami? What about the earthquakes? What about tornadoes? I said, even with those things, we maybe are not able to prevent them, but we're able to minimize damage with the right preparation. The tsunami, when it hit Indonesia and Thailand, the years ago, the Indonesian government, there was a minister for years was asking for an early alert system. There was one girl who saved hundreds of people because she knew that when the water recedes too much, it is a sign of a tsunami. It's not a regular ebb and flow. So she yelled to people who were waiting in the water, "Get out!" What if everybody would have known that? I mean, there are many things that could have been done if people didn't build houses on the shores and destroy the. I mean, there are so many things that we do that are our fault. But beyond that, there's something even deeper, I think, with that. And that's something that I've noticed after 9/11. It was a hard time. I was in New York at the time, and I actually I was walking to the shul, to my office, when after the first plane hit the towers, and someone came running, says, "Rabbi, look," and I look up, and as you can see, the smoke. So I ran to the office, looking up at the TV. The second plane hit. It was just crazy. So we got phone calls, "Come pick up your kids from school." Many of my congregants were in the towers, walking back. Most of them, survived. They were walking back over the Brooklyn Bridge. Nobody knew what was going on, and of course, everybody was following, every little thing. But something came up in the press a while later that really caught my attention, and it was that the percentage of petty crimes or crime in general in the United States dropped consecutively for 6 months after 9/11 until it started climbing back. And that was something that told me that this is like sort of collective consciousness. People felt that there's so much evil that we have to balance it by, like, I cannot steal a radio from a car, right? Or I cannot, deceive someone when this is happening. What if people were always in that state of mind? What if people were always, I have to do good because we just want the world to be better. This is the real tikkun olam. So people argue, no, but this is not going to help much. But what if people exercise that, right? No reckless driving. No, I mean, imagine no traffic violations or parking violations. You free up all the police force to take care of bigger crimes. But if those bigger criminals decide not to do it, then you free up more manpower to do more things. Let's say people decide not to fight, no wars, then you could invest in medical research. People say, we have medical problems that we cannot solve, but every year hundreds of thousands of people die because of infections in hospitals because doctors don't, and nurses and staff don't follow the rules of hygiene. So what if just you did all those little things, the world would be so much better off. And we are on that track, we just don't know it because we keep getting information and we think the world is going down the drain. And our parents always said that, no? When I was a kid. No, our world, I think our world is much better.
Check out the Stevie Wonder song Visions. What you're saying on Intervision.
Intervision.
So would this suggest that 9/11 is meant to send a message or something like
No,
that?
no. It's not God sending a message. It's human sending a message. It was man-made. It could have been prevented in so many ways. One would have been a global idea, identification card that was refused by one vote, I think, in Congress or something like that, because those people were flagged. There were a lot of other failures along the way. So many things could have been prevented.
There was an FBI agent who knew
Yeah.
something strange was going on. She reported it.
Yeah.
These guys were learning how to fly, but not take off her
Yeah.
land. And she went to her supervisors, and they said, not important. Don't worry about it.
Yeah. So, and this is with almost everything. You look in the wars, diseases, disasters in the world, 90%, at least, 80%, if we could have solved by ourselves without God's intervention. So let's do that and then turn to God. That's what I think. So, going back to all that, I think that is maybe a subliminal message that was planted there. I think that is so compelling when you read the narrative of the Torah, even when you read the stories of the construction of the Mishkan. You feel that there's something there that gives you sort of a plan.
You don't think it's temporary?
What? Oh,
These steps in the right direction.
in the Mishkan?
No.
Oh, you mean like that they're reversible?
No, like the fact that after 9/11 there was much less crime.
No, it was temporary.
Yeah.
It faded after 6 months.
That's right.
But overall, if you look at the trajectory of humanity, yes, there are many more casualties maybe today, but if you look at it per capita,
No, this is the safest time ever.
right. So this is statistically, Steven Pinker wrote a book on that. It's called The Better Angels of Our Nature. Yeah, I'm halfway through. This is a very thick book.
It is a very thick book.
A lot of numbers.
And he also has, he's got, you figure out what his argument is, and then after that.
Yeah,
it's just-
right. But you know what? I'll give you one
good
fact from that book that is connected directly to the Torah. That's Haim. That was really, it doesn't say it in connection with the Torah, but for me it was like an epiphany reading his book in that context, and that is, the Torah in Devarim, in chapter 23, in Deuteronomy, we read about a very strange halacha, and that is about making sure that you cover your traces when you relieve yourself as a soldier, right? The Torah says you have to have a shovel, you dig a hole, you do what you do, and then you cover it. So why is it so important? So one way I always understood that the Torah, and this is in 23, 13, 14, 15 in Deuteronomy. And the Torah says that this is nakedness. If God sees that, he will abandon you. It's like it's a holy thing, or a question of holiness. And I always understood that as a safety measure. The Torah tells soldiers, be very careful, because really this is something that killed hundreds and thousands of soldiers, diseases that are spread through bacteria, through disease like that. So the Torah created like as a religious commandment to make sure that people will follow. But then I read, and I still think it's true, but there's something greater. That Pinker says in this book that the idea of cruel torture as what we call it, a cruel and unusual punishment that should be rejected, that idea started taking root in the 15th century in England, 15th, 16th, and then slowly people pushed out, from the official systems, the different methods of torture. And he correlates that with the appearance of books of manners, of table manners. And there's very interesting evidence there. It says that when people used to eat, there were fights over in tables where, people would use cleavers. to cut their meat, and they would kill each other also. So when people ate with their hands, and they didn't, when you don't care about your body hygiene, you lose respect to your own Tselem Elokim, your own image of God. And if you don't respect yourself, you don't respect others.
That's like the broken windows theory of policing.
Yeah, sort of. But this, so the broken windows theory of, I think William Breton is right, is something that, it's about how it affects society in general. And this is about how you feel about yourself. I think we all know that, you come from it. The first thing you want to do is after Yom Kippur or after you got stuck in the airport, like that, you want to take a shower and and I'm a new person. And people who are depressed or mentally ill, many times would neglect themselves.
Mhm.
So the moment you take care of yourself, you respect others. So this is brilliant when you look now in this pasuk in the Torah. Torah says, you go to war. This is the greatest danger of losing respect for human dignity. Now, the moment you know that for you, uncleanliness is something that God rejects, you should be more careful about your dignity, hopefully about the dignity of others. Of course, the big question that stays with, when we speak about war is Amalek. So I cannot deal with it now, but I think that is connected in the way how Torah changes our perspective to life. And that is something that was really later on picked up in halakha, a lot of rules about hygiene and taking care of the body and Tselem Elokim that really, I think, set Judaism apart. That, I think, contributed to the fact that we didn't have a civil war for the last 2,000 years. So people could say because we didn't have an army, but even the last 70 or 100 years where we did have.
Jews didn't have.
We didn't have civil wars.
No.
Even when we were on the verge of having it with the establishment of the state of Israel, between the Etz and Haggadah and the Lehi, it did not happen. So I think there's something there. That's the tree of life. Okay, we'll
So
conclude
you
here.
think we're moving from Perikabet towards Perikabet?
Yeah, I think there's a slow movement.
That's a
Hopefully.
good optimistic
Yeah,
takeaway.
I'd rather live as an optimistic,
Yeah.
even if I die as a pessimistic.
By the way, the Boy Scouts have picked up those rules, and it's the first thing you learn before you go camping.
Really?
Like,